This is Shawn SixX, and I am here with vocalist Rob Chevelle from the band Lit Soul. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great, Shawn.
I appreciate you taking the time. So let's start off. The big question that I had for you is Rob Chevelle trying to bring back social consciousness to rock and roll bands?
Oh, wow. Good question. I'm just a guy. I'm just a musician. I like to express myself through music. A lot of my lyrics are I write a lot of poetry as well, and I try to put some political memes in there, people get it. I love it. If they don't get it, there's always more songs to write, more to create. But, I enjoy when people dig it or kind of wake up. If I could wake up one person, in my opinion, it's all worth it.
It seems that bands nowadays have kind of gotten used to playing it safe. People, whether it be the industry, whether it be the actual fans themselves, the public, have kind of lulled bands into a sense of security that, they don't have to say anything. They don't have to be risky. They don't have to take chances. They don't have to have a voice. And we used to see that. We used to see that rock bands coming out of the 60s into the 70s. Bands actually had something to say. There was war to talk about. There was social upheaval. There was strife going on in our country. Do you think that bands need to do more of that now?
Yeah, that would be great. There's only so much you can sing about, I'm just kind of kidding here in a way, but, panties or drinking or, all those two things are great. But, if you can say a little more and bring more to the table, I think it's great. I got into rock, when I was a teenager and stuff. A lot of those bands I recall in the past, they're speaking out against the man. They're speaking out truth and stuff like that. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of bands are scared to do that. I think a lot of it's the media and people getting upset of everything and snowflakes and, offensive things. Everybody's like crying behind, it's just words, As long as you're not hurting anybody, there's a First Amendment, you can say anything you want, and that's how this country was founded. And you can't do that in other countries, and they're trying to make this country where you can't do that either, through social justice and stuff like that. And it's not justice. It's like injustice. But I 100% agree with you. And, speaking your mind and getting your word out there is part of your freedom, I've been in other bands and stuff, a lot of them. And, and the reason why I have Lit Soul, Lit Soul is my band. I created everything in it. And I have incredible players that play with me. And, they are in the band. And we're all a gang. But, it's still, I progressed to this band from other bands because there are other musicians out there that are afraid, and they don't really down with, I'm not really into politics, man, but, well, what does that mean? It's like
right.
If you've got a gun to your head from somebody, are you going to do something about it, So it's, you know what I mean? It's just freedom of speech.
Looking back at your history and doing some research about Rob Chevelle, you grew up listening to what a lot of people now have kind of forgotten what music was like. You grew up listening to a lot of soul. You grew up listening to a lot of Motown, a lot of 70s and 60s classic rock, well, what we consider classic rock, or now is even older than classic rock. But people had something to say. People did take chances. You listened to songs that Dylan sang. Granted, half the time you couldn't understand what he was saying, but when you could hear that he actually had some sort of commentary to make, and you consider yourself a poet, and maybe that's something that we need to do more of now in rock and roll. It seems like bands are more about pomp and circumstance, more about putting on an image, a show, and that's fine. People want to be entertained, but there also needs to be some sort of substance to it. They need to write a good song. And that seems to be kind of flying out the window. It's great that the technology allows them to go to, a store like Guitar Center, spend $5,000, record an album in their grandmother's basement. But does it mean that it's worth anything? Does it say anything? Does it stand the test of time? Will they last any more than one season on Warped Tour? And that seems to be missing. Bands need to put some substance behind it. And you're making it your sole mission to do more of that with Lit Soul and the music that you're making. But the one thing that stood out the most to me about that was your concept of liberty. And you have some very strong opinions on that, about what's going on in our country, how it affects you as an artist, how it affects you as a citizen, and how it affects the rest of society. Is that something that is equal parts of Lit Soul, or is that something that just happens to be more Rob Chevelle and ends up kind of navigating into the music?
Like the other guys in the band?
Well, I mean, does everybody have a shared opinion?
Well, I'm primarily the songwriter. I write 90% of the music. I do all the melodies and all the lyrics. But, you were saying a minute ago, like Bob Dylan and stuff, it's like, you could take one line. The beautiful thing about writing music and having a song is it could be one line in a song. It could be a hook. It could just be that communicates so well. People remember that, So when I write music, I try to do that as well. I actually have 2 poetry albums. I have 6 releases under the title of Lit Soul. The 6th one's coming out January 19th, our new album called Your Crusade.
Right.
But I do have 2 poetry albums, and one is with music, which is kind of unusual. So and that's pretty, a lot of political stuff there, too. But guys in my band, I would say Steve, the lead guitar player, and Dano, the bass player, we're all pretty much on the same page. The drummer, Ty, he's amazing. He's a little more progressive. He's a little more, left, if you will, kind of thing.
Okay.
But you just kind of keep it, to the music and stuff. And that's the thing, you can have disagreements. I mean, that's the thing of the First Amendment and free speech. When everybody's so butthurt that you say something that's so offensive and then, like, they want to kill you for some reason, it's like debate should be open. Everybody has their own opinion. I never condemn anybody for their opinion, It's just like, you want to say your thing, great. I'll say my thing too, But, coming off, I'm ranting here, but you said another thing too, politically, the reason why I kind of do it is, I don't know, I mean, the way I was grown up and my dad was in the Navy and I've seen a lot of stuff and I've traveled and, things are really, really simple, actually. It's made complicated by our media and it's made complicated by government school systems and all this stuff, but you really step back and look at the big picture. What holds us all in place is you can call it the New World Order, you can call it the world bankers. They have a fake money system. There's no gold backing it. It's just numbers in a computer and they print paper.
That's right.
And they own it, and they've sold everybody to buy into this fake system, and that's how they can control everything. I don't care what it is, Hollywood, schools, psychiatry, vaccines, all the puppets in government, it's like they literally control everything. If that system was eradicated, the Federal Reserve Bank, which is completely, a falsehood, it'd be a completely different scene. They could no longer be in power. But a lot of people just kind of go on with their lives and look down at their feet or their cell phones, and they just, they don't care, So I try to, wake up people to that through my music. Yeah.
And I'm glad that you're trying to do something like that. And I love the aspect of where you're saying that not everybody in the band has the exact same mentality about everything. Everybody has their own views. You guys have a like-minded mentality, which is why you've been together. That's why you play together. You have shared values. But the intricate little tiny details are individual to every little band member. It's amazing that you make the statement that you guys all get along and that you agree to disagree on certain things, because that has been a downfall for a lot of bands throughout what we consider the history of music in general. I mean, we can see it right now, stuff that's going on with Journey. For instance, you have band members that are maybe aligning themselves one particular orientation or not, and another band member says, I can't deal with that, and, basically the band is on the verge of being done because of something like that. It ruins the music. And, yes, it is nice to have a shared value on certain things. There's certain things that kind of will separate people from being around each other. And those are core values about being a good human and being a good member of society and so on and so forth. But the intricate little details, like you say, somebody in your band might be a little more left-oriented than maybe you are. It doesn't mean that you guys can't make great music together and actually have a social voice. It just means that you might have slight disagreements, and it might be an interesting practice session.
Exactly.
So that being said, what do you think has been the hardest thing for you, maybe specifically as an artist first, and then maybe as a band member second, and trying to do something like that, and trying to have a cohesive unit, a band that might have difference of opinions, and trying to make good music? What is the most difficult part in your experience?
Well, I think when you get, like, even in this lineup I have right now, I mean, Steve and Dano, the bass player and the lead guitar player, they've been in the band for a bit over a year. This is kind of like my third lineup, if you will. I mean, It's always been me. It's always been the drummer Ty as well. And everybody has been in Soul has been totally professional. I love everybody. We're all still friends. But it's my band, we do stuff for a while and then they go off and they want to do their thing or whatever, so it's always like you have to create it. But the common denominator, I think, is everybody's been a band. It's the music. I mean, it's different in a way. I mean,
right.
It's melodic, it's heavy, it's, I think that you got to have a common goal. First, it's definitely to rock, and
right.
just like, let's do that. But also it's the message, and everybody that I've met has been in this band has been completely aware of the message, and they totally agree. We liberty in the modern age. It's just like, we're a band that definitely advocates that. But, to answer your question, I think, you sit down, you look at each other and like, let's rock. We're writing music. If I say stuff in between songs, about this stuff, they're well aware of it and they back it up. So, it's just having a common goal and everybody agrees with that. I think we're definitely not in the club so far as, a lot of bands out there, these huge bands and huge pop stars. I mean, they're in the club. What I mean by the club is, there's very few bands out there that really make it and make like the old, rock star days and get a mansion and cars
right.
and all these advances. I mean, that shit's gone.
Right.
But, if you make it in the industry today, you kind of in a way got to sell your soul because you got to do what they say, and you can't say stuff. I mean, even Rage Against the Machine. I mean, even though they're a little bit more chi and a little more actually communist in a way, but at least they still stick out like fuck the man. You
right.
got Pumpkins. Billy Corgan. He's talked out about chemtrails and stuff. But, he doesn't do it too much, but, he's even on Alex Jones and stuff like that. But I think it's helped him. He's definitely talked out about that kind of stuff. You got Dave Mustaine from Megadeth.
Right.
He's also done stuff and said things, too, and also been on those programs and stuff. So I don't think it's as taboo. But also, if you look at those guys, it's also their band.
Right.
Their band. That's what they do, and that's what it's part of what drives them. So if you have other guys in your band, you got to be best friends. I mean, what I love about this lineup right now is we are a gang. We are just really good friends. We just rehearsed last night. We're drinking beer, we're rehearsing, and we got a gig coming up and stuff. And it's just so much fun. Then when we take breaks, we talk about everything that guys talk about, and we also get political and stuff. But we're just on the same page. So I guess like-minded people, you got to kind of do that. It'd probably be hard for me to have a snowflake in my band and crying all the time. You know what I mean?
And I laugh about that, and it sounds so elementary for us to think that and say well, we just want to have a gang, a bunch of buddies and stuff that can all get along, shoot the shit, and have a generalized goal of saying, let's just make great music, rock out, have a good time, and thrill the crowd. It sounds simple, but sometimes along the lines, life and different people's, and I like to refer to it as egos, have a tendency to step on their own foot, and that kind of screws things up. And you always... It seems like there's always one band that you say that can always, you're like, oh, they could just go so far and do so many great things. And for some reason, there's just that one person in the band that just can't get on board. It kind of screws it up for everybody else. But it's good that you've found that, and that does take a lot. Like you said, you've went through a couple of lineup changes, and it does kind of take a while to find the right fit. All the little puzzle pieces kind of have to fit together smoothly. Doesn't mean that they have to be perfect, but as long as, even if you kind of have to pound them in place, as long as they're all in there and they all have the same direction, they're going to make a decent picture at the end, it all seems to work out.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that dawned on me, now your band is based in L.A., correct?
Correct.
Okay. Of all places to have a band that talks about liberty and freedoms and ensuring what the country was founded on, L.A. is about the most plastic, about the most beige area in the world, even though they don't want to think it is, about kind of following along in line with the man. Is that difficult? Because L.A. used to be a hotbed. L.A. used to be the rebel and, center of rock and roll, but now it seems to be corporate America controlling the pop world in L.A. How is that still as an artist trying to survive in an environment like that?
It's rough. I mean, I got here in the 90s, it was even way different then.
Right.
It's such a, it's a democratic state. Our governor's horrible, Jerry Brown. It's just... the society has changed. I remember the Strip, and even in the 90s. Of course, the history of even in the 60s, there was a Renaissance, and it was
right.
huge. course, into the 70s and the 80s was another explosion, and and it was just the place to go. People just moved here, and this is where the music's at, and this is where everything's at, and you can just do what you want. And then, I think it kind of died. I mean, early 90s, probably like 94. I mean, I remember the strip down by the Rainbow and Roxy and and the Viper Room and all that stuff. It's like, when the clubs closed, you'd walk out of the club, there would be so many people that the cops would have to barricade off the street, up by
right.
Bill Turner Liquor down to Larrabee. They would block that off because there were so many people. They would overflow the sidewalk and go into the street.
And now the cops are there to prevent it from even happening to begin with.
Yeah, yeah. It's a completely different scene. I think a lot of the reasons for that is there's a few. I mean, one is the internet. I mean, two is the music's free now, and you can see a band online as opposed to maybe going. But you also got, when you got, and listen, I'm the least. I'm telling you, I'm the least prejudiced or I love everybody. I love all races. I don't care what you are.
Right.
Totally. I look at what you do. I don't look at what your skin color is or anything like that. But a lot of the policies they did, if you have open borders, complete, and people can just come in and get better benefits than people who have actually lived here. And then the people are coming from all other countries that actually come here. And now it's kind of like, it's turned upside down where, our generation or white people or rockers is completely the minority. It's still out there. People love it. I mean, that people want to go see shows and stuff like that. But my point is if you start bringing all these people in, different kinds of music, all this stuff, it's completely wiped out what the scene used to be from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Now it's a completely different scene. I mean, rock is dead pretty much in L.A. If you listen to the mainstream media, or you're in an elevator or you're at a store listening to music or something like that. I smile though when I see kids, going down the street and cranking AC/DC or something like that, and they're like 14, something like that. I mean, it's still there because it's timeless music. But I'm just trying to get your point about California. If you go down south, or you go to like Austin, or you go to Nashville, or go to like, places like that, it's like, it's alive and well, music,
Right. It's still vibrant. And that's kind of, I don't want to say it's depressing because it is still there. Like you said, there is still glimmers of hope that's there. And the fact that you got to experience it throughout your musical history of getting there in the 90s and still kind of seeing and I hate to say it, even in the 90s, it was almost kind of like the swan song of what was going on for the rock scene in LA. It was just kind of at that point kind of teetering on, is it going to last another 10 years or is it going to kind of navigate away? And we all know what ended up happening. Obviously, grunge came in and kind of killed what we thought was the glam era of rock and roll, or that idea of what we thought heavy metal was, and that kind of changed things, obviously. And that's a whole history lesson of what happened to rock and roll, and we don't need to get into that, but it's interesting on how it kind of navigated from one place or another. I know a lot of people personally that have worked, had their careers, became famous, and had successful bands out of LA that now have moved on to Nashville.
Yeah.
Because it's cheap to live and it's songwriter heaven. And, we look at that and we go, okay, that kind of makes me scratch my head and say, okay, well, the place that has the Grand Ole Opry that we associate country music, and now all of a sudden is becoming the new LA.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird for some people, and maybe that's our age too. Maybe if you're of a certain age bracket, that kind of maybe plucks at the heartstrings a little bit. The younger crowd now, they don't see any difference in it because, like you said, the technology, they can do it from home. It doesn't matter where they associate their music scene now. Their music scene is fluid. It's all encompassing. It's everywhere, and that's great because it makes it available. It makes it available for a band like Lit Soul to be able to get their music out to the masses easier than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But also it makes it difficult too because you're competing with the background noise. There's lots of other bands that are there.
Exactly. And just to go a little bit deeper, it's kind of like I don't think anything's really a mistake. I think people kind of go, oh, it's this reaction, but I think a lot of stuff is planned and it's done. And what I mean by that is, I think the music industry has been killed in a way, and rock has been killed in a way. I mean, it's totally still alive, but it's like in a way so far as the mainstream goes because, like we said, technology. You got Napster when it first came out, and
Right.
things are free online, music's free. I mean, come on, Metallica's new album, Marilyn Manson's new album. I mean, 2 days after it's released, it's on YouTube for free.
Right.
Now you got to ask yourself, why? How is that? Isn't there like a lawyer? How could that even be? I mean,
How is anybody
plot.
making any money off of it if it's basically defeating the purpose of buying it?
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. It's just been kind of killed, because if they really wanted to have music and independence, they don't want that. They want like a person, okay, they're good looking, maybe they got a good voice. Let's write songs for them. Let's write music for them. Let's
Right.
make it more poppy. Let's degrade the lyrics. Let's make it stupid. Let's degrade down to just the lowest levels of humanity for what they're saying. And let's push that. And they push it, and they push it, and they push it. And then it catches on, and people go, oh, and then, everything kind of changes that way. But my point is like guys in the garage, you get together and you get in a band, and they, the people are still doing that. It's because it's in their DNA. It's like they love music. They want to do that. That's what they're born to do. And, you do the best you can. But, when you're facing, like in L.A., where, again, you have just up until, recently, or hopefully it'll change, but, you change in society. You can't just bring in all these different people from different parts of the world, from different genres and different ethnics and different cultures, and dump it all here, and then expect things that are of value to the people who were here to continue. It's been just completely washed off the map almost. So it's a mixture of that, and then, but I think there's a up high. It's pushed to dull creativity, or to for people to speak out, or rock music, which is against establishment from day one. All that stuff. It's another thing they do to put the nail in the coffin to make it so difficult. And again, this is my example of Marilyn Manson, Metallica, other bands. It's on YouTube 2 days later. I mean, if you really step back and look at that, how could that possibly be? Like,
Right.
we just like who would even allow that? It's
Right.
like, is there a lawyer somewhere or some kind of law, that like that's not okay? You can't do that.
Well, it's interesting because, and that's a really good point. My background obviously being in, commercial radio, but the interesting thing for, coming from that side of the industry is learning about what's the real commodity. Is it the music itself, or is it the things that are the spin-off, the fringe aspects of music? So you see something like a band like Metallica, a band like Marilyn Manson doing a release, big build-up, there's lots of, pre-press for it, and everybody's kind of teasing it, and you see lots of stuff online, and you see, flashes of imagery saying, hey, this album's coming out on this date, or save this date, or what have you, and the social media campaigns are just rampant everywhere. And then the album comes out, they release it. There's a big build-up for like 2 days, and then, like you said, it's on YouTube for free thereafter. It's like,
Yep.
Where's the generating income source on that? It's obviously not the record sales anymore.
What I think is bands like Metallica, by the way, and Marilyn Manson, they're in the club. They've already made it. They're up there.
Right.
Like, they're in the club. I'll give you a couple other examples. A band like The Cult, okay? Great band, been around a long time. But they're road dogs. I mean, these guys, to make money, have to tour to get money from ticket sales and merch.
Right.
They're not making any money from the actual albums.
No.
That's a band like that. A band like him. In my what I can gather, I don't know everything on the inside totally, but I happen to know. I think that they're calling it quits after 26 years.
Right.
For some things internally in the band, but also making the money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like the record sales completely crashed out the bottom, so they're not exactly totally in the club, I think, but, they're on their way. But, you know what I mean? So you got to tour, you got to sell merch, you got to, all that, even those sides of bands, just to make any money at all,
And it is, and I always associated that whole aspect is that the money that's being made is advertising. It's the fringe stuff that comes off the product. You have an artist who creates a product that puts it out there. It has some sort of intrinsic artistic value to it, but people aren't buying that part. They're buying the other stuff that goes along with it. The 15 million ads for a major retailer that's playing for 30 seconds prior to the song on YouTube for the new Marilyn Manson album. Stuff like that. That's where the money's coming from. And, looking at the pop world, and this is interesting because rock bands used to do stuff like this. And this might surprise a lot of people, but you have somebody like, for instance, Taylor Swift, okay? And you might find this interesting, but when Taylor Swift released an album and refused to allow iTunes, Apple Music, to sell it.
Oh, yeah?
That was something that she was saying, I'm taking the control of my art back. You're not just going to basically whore it out there and capitalize on all the income off of it. I'm actually going to say who's going to buy it, where it's going to be distributed, so on and so forth. Granted, she's part of that club. She's established. She's wealthy. She is up in that upper echelon of artists that are out there, performers, so she can make those decisions. She can be picky like that and say, no, you're not going to do it to somebody like iTunes. That's a risky venture. A band that's just starting out can't do that because that's basically, that's not a nail in the coffin. That's literally burying the coffin at that point.
Suicide, yeah.
Right. So, but you have somebody, that theory of doing that is saying, okay, I'm not going to allow a big corporate entity like iTunes saying, we're going to just tour your music out there for you. She's like, no, I'm not going to let you do that. I will tell you when you can distribute my music. That freaked people out. They lost their mind. They're like, holy shit, how is she able to do that? Well, because first of all, she's powerful. It's also, she does have some sort of statement to make. Now, that might not be popular amongst the rockers, saying that something that Taylor Swift is doing is a rock star value from 30 years ago, but it does say something. It does say that somebody does something like that and says, I want to take back my art, my artistry, and this is what I'm going to do with it. You're not going to control it. It's awesome that you, Rob, and your bandmates in Lit Soul are still proverbial flipping the finger to the man and doing something like that, still holding on to those values that made rock and roll what I consider rock and roll. Like you and I talked about off mic, was that I have a theory about that the balls have been snipped off of rock and roll, that they've castrated it. They've basically made it something that wasn't powerful, wasn't virile, wasn't what we thought rock and roll was. And that's a shame. And I applaud you for still holding on to those values, still trying to force rock and roll out there to people and say, look, you know, you don't have to like our music specifically. We'd like you to, but you need to understand what it was here for in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. But hey, man, thank you so much for saying that. And you know, I mean, whatever happens in the future, you know, we're just create. That's what artists do. You just got to keep creating, and you know, and get through whatever barriers, and you know, express yourself. So you know, that's what we're doing. By the way, the thing on Taylor Swift, I think that was pretty cool. I didn't know that. I do have a daughter who really likes her.
Right.
I did check her out a bit. I mean, I understand she writes a lot of her own music, which is cool.
Right.
You know, and she did that. And kind of the opposite is like the New World Order band U2, which I used to really dig.
Right.
But you know, Bono being all in bed with Bill Gates and, you know, vaccines and GMOs and chemtrails, you know, all that stuff. And I heard his last album. Oh, by the way, iTunes, he forces you to have it. I have it in my freaking phone. His one album forced us to get it. You know, it's like, I didn't ask for that. I didn't want to buy it, but it's in my fucking phone, you know?
Yeah, you didn't have a choice. They said, you know what? You're taking it. You're taking it whether you want to or not. We don't care if you like it, but you're going to hear it. Now, marketing, that's awesome.
The new album they have coming out, by the way, they actually had ready, was going to be released when he thought Hillary was going to be elected.
Right.
And what I think is they shelved that album, or he had to change at least some lyrical content and at least some maybe song titles, I'm thinking. But, you know, I don't know, have all the inside, but what I'm thinking is that they had to shelf that, and now it's coming out here soon, I think. But I don't care. But
they potentially pigeonholed themselves because they made a very obvious political opinion in their music, and because it didn't work out the way they thought it was going to, they didn't want to screw themselves in the long run.
Yeah, and like the point we're making, I mean, hey, his band, I mean, he wants to do all that. That's great, but the sad part of it is so obvious. It's so obvious that he's turned into a complete puppet. And he's part of that group, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, Rob, I want to do the business side. So since we're talking about the man and the business, I want to do a business thing and pay credit where credit is due. You have a new album called Your Crusade that's coming out January 19th of 2018, very shortly coming out. And it's awesome. I love the title, first of all, because of what we're talking about here. This is a crusade. You are literally forging a crusade. You're going out there, you're laying it out there. It is kind of like the last hope, and you're doing the do or die, swing for the fence. No one likes a quitter, go big or go home.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks, man. Your crusade is kind of like, like I said, to call it my crusade, but I kind of said your crusade because I want everybody to kind of, it's everybody has a crusade. Everybody has
Right.
a mission. They have a purpose. I mean, if you don't, what's the point of even existing?
Right.
So,
Exactly.
So when I came up with that title, it was really just to kind of embody that whole feel, and a person who picks up the album or listens to it can be a part of it and actually feel they're a part of it because, they have their own goal, they have their own purpose. So that's kind of, I guess, what that title means to me.
Now, when the album comes out, you're going to be doing a release party for it?
Yeah, we're doing a release January 19th when the album comes out. By
Right.
the way, it's Ty Dennis, my drummer's birthday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and that's our first gig for the new year, and we have 2 other gigs set up as well. I don't want to announce those yet because I just want, to make this first one a big deal right now.
Okay.
So, and we just plan on just promoting the album and gigging as much as possible. And, of course, it always starts local. We'll be doing L.A., Orange County, San Diego, probably
Nice.
Vegas, Palm Springs, and spread out from there, hopefully, and stuff like that. Yeah, that's a big date, and it's going to be a great night. And anybody who hears this in the area, please come on down to the Rainbow Bar and Grill.
Awesome.
Famous place. Yep.
Go down there and get your Jack and Coke in honor of Lemmy, listen to some great music by Lit Soul, and their pizza is pretty awesome, too.
It is, and there's a big statue of Lemmy now there.
That is true. That is true. Your website, litsoul.com. You're on all the social medias.
Everything's there. Yeah, tons of merch, videos, our official videos, lots of merch, our back albums. Again, Your Crusade's the 6th release that we've had.
Right.
And, everything's there, social media, all the different things that you can imagine.
Excellent.
Being promoted and supported by actually Metal Babe Mayhem, Metal Babe Productions.
Very nice.
Metal Babe Mayhem Music, MBM, yes.
Awesome. Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you taking the time. I'm glad that we were able to do this and we could get time to chat. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, man. And, end up on a high note here. It's like, music's alive, rock and roll's alive, express yourself, and thanks to people like you who keep it alive as well. And thank you so much, man.
Awesome.